welcome everybody. My name's Cris Karson. I'm one of the partners at Northern Alliance and specifically with the Metro City Property Group. I'm a partner in Metro City and I'm in charge of all the commercial. So I try to do trainings like this focused on the commercial world and their relevance in realty. To give you all a bit of background, my background is construction, civil construction. Used to do, we had a family business, used to do a lot of road building, had sand pits and quarries, and we do a lot of civil work for large commercial and industrial buildings, things of that nature. So I've been in realty for 15 years now, and all the while I've been developing land and project managing different developments. I'm in my projects, I'm usually in charge of land and getting the approvals for whatever project I'm working on. I've built a couple hundred apartment units over the last 6 years, multiple estate lot subdivisions, things of that nature. Right now, I'm working on some condominium projects. I tend to focus these days still wood frame, 3-story. I've got a kind of a niche, if you will. I'm not into high rise at the moment, but I stay in the 3-story wood frame. Right now, we've got a project in Kempville that I'll probably share with you guys. 108 stacked townhouse condominium units, just to give you some background of where I'm gathering my knowledge from, and maybe give you a window into my experience, and I encourage you guys all to tap into that and ask questions. I'll try to keep it relevant to realty. It's easy for me to go off in a construction or development tangent, but I always want to bring it back and try to focus on how it's relevant to realty itself. So today I'm going to be talking to you about basically site plan approvals, and where I find that relevant in the realty world is we end up with a lot of buyers or sellers looking for or looking to sell development related land, and often there's one big misnomer that I want to start with today. And in the industry, there's some misnomers, and there's a lot of talk of shovel ready projects. And I want to talk to you about, what I believe is a shovel ready project. And, basically a lot of the projects that we see in a lot of the development that is approved is done through the site plan application process. Anything usually over 5 units goes through the site plan application process. It's different than a regular residential building permit. If you've generally 4 units or less, you can get away with submitting your plans and looking to obtain a building permit. But anything 5 units or more, generally speaking, they're asking you for a site plan application. Now, there's this is kind of speaking about residential. If you add some commercial into the mix, you're generally going to be asked by the City of Ottawa to do a full site plan application. And anyway, I'm here today to talk to you about that whole process and see if I can clarify some people's questions or understanding of the process, how the approvals work, what's necessary in the approval process, and how that's relevant to us in realty. So number one, again, I'll start with the misnomer that you're going to find a lot of land out there, let's say you're looking for a small or medium-sized developer that wants land to build something, and you're going to come across some land, and people are advertising or talking about it being a shovel-ready project. In my opinion, shovel-ready is something that's got a building permit, and you're able to go ahead and put a shovel in the ground and start digging, as soon as possible. But in the industry, that term gets thrown around quite a lot. And a lot of people think it's synonymous with a site plan approval or some other type of zoning approvals. But our job as realtors for such a commercial venture is to understand what stage of the process that lands at, and make sure that we pass that along to our clients. So just to give you an example, you can have a site plan approval, a site plan that is approved. Let's say we're going after, a 24 unit apartment building, and we've got approval to do it. But the site plan approval doesn't necessarily mean that all the engineering is done and you've got your building permit ready, which means you've got all your development fees paid, and that might take another $200,000 worth of engineering and $200,000 worth of development fees to be paid, and a building permit. So you could be $500,000 off of an actual shovel-ready project that people are saying it's shovel-ready, but there's still quite a bit of engineering and work and approvals to be done to actually put a shovel in the ground and get it up. So that's kind of a misnomer that I wanted to tackle at the beginning, maybe get people's kind of minds wrapped around what that looks like, and beware of the shovel-ready project terminology, because most people in the industry unfortunately don't really know what that means. So I want everybody to kind of be heads up when they're looking at land, or when they're looking for land for clients, and understanding basically what our job is to identify what stage a piece of land is at, and make sure that the client knows what other work and money has to be put into it in order to get that piece of land to a fully approved and permit ready status. So everybody feel free to ask questions along the way. I encourage interaction. Has anybody dealt with any projects or land acquisitions in the past that they've come across this situation? Nobody chatting just at the moment. That's okay. I'll assume that everybody's fully engaged, and oh, we got Meraldo, who says no. Thanks for the chat and chiming in. Anybody feel free to ask questions all along the way. I'm going to get into basically the site plan application process, so that hopefully it'll open your eyes a bit if you haven't experienced it just yet. What's involved in the site plan application process, and what it is. It's like I said before, above and beyond just your general single family residential home. When you're looking at larger projects, whether it's a 5-unit or more of residential, it could be a large apartment building, it could be a hotel or a commercial plaza, large industrial scale projects. You're asked by the city, and this could be the city of Ottawa, it could be another municipality. I don't know where everybody here is from, but the the standard practice is similar in all municipalities. And when you get a large enough scale project, you're asked to provide more information and do more studies based on the use. And so let's say you've got a piece of land and you've got a project in mind. What the general process is that you engage with the municipality. It could be the city of Ottawa, it could be a municipality. I'm going to show you my Kemptville project momentarily, and in that case it's the municipality of North Grenville. And the first steps are to engage with the municipality and do what is generally referred to as a pre-consultation meeting. And in that pre-consultation meeting with the municipality, you're going to outline your project, bring them, the idea that you have, generally some type of, you don't have to have renderings or anything architecture completed at this time, but you're telling them, here's the piece of land that I've got or I want to develop on, and this is my idea I want to build. I'll just go through my process in the what I'm building right now is 108 stacked condominium units in Kemptville, and they're basically 12-unit buildings, and I'm currently in the application stage, so it's very relevant to this topic. I'm building 9 12-unit buildings for a total of 108. So you would bring your desired application or your desired use to the city or municipality, and they're going to outline, the challenges, whether or not they've got some initial support for the project, and basically they're going to tell you all the steps that you must take in order to complete an application. Just to apply doesn't mean you fill out a form. They're going to tell you that you've got to do, and I'm just going to bring up a few examples. It's not going to be the exact same in every case, but you're going to have to do all of your architectural work and actually have an architect draft these buildings so you can show them the plans, what the buildings are going to look like, what the layouts are going to look like. You're going to have to do a grading plan, generally an environmental study. You're going to do any of the studies. It could be geotechnical and everything that they ask of you to go through the process and actually apply for what we know as the site plan application. And I'll just go ahead and share my screen here. And I'm going to bring up, can you guys let me know if you can see my screen? Can anybody see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so this right here is just a folder of all of my studies and reports that I was asked by the city to prepare in order to make my application. So I'll share with you the latest architectural set. This should show the majority of what I'd like to show. Okay, can everybody see this? This is actually my site plan. So it's basically an aerial view of the site plan. Angelo, you're probably familiar working with site plans. If you're in the project management world, you may have even, done quite a bit of this yourself, but this is my particular site plan that I'm working with on my development project in Kempville. And this is the actual site plan, and it shows where the roads are, the sidewalks. It involves there's deeper layers. I won't be able to show you absolutely every single layer or plan, because there's hundreds and hundreds of plans and images that go into it. This is my architecture portion of it. Elevations that show what the buildings are going to look like from a side view. This brings heights into consideration, windows, lighting, light penetration into the buildings, and basically, outlines a very, very detailed schematic of what the buildings are going to look like, right down to the engineering, the civil engineering of grading, how the stormwater is going to come into effect, how we're going to service the property with electrical and sanitary sewers, and a whole host of how this is actually going to happen. I'll show you a rendering, and this is what we're looking to achieve in the long run. But basically, all of this is applied for through the site plan application phase, and that's the basic, in a very broad overview, nutshell of how the process works. We've taken right now the land it's raw, bare, and we are looking to get approval for these developments, and there's a set of stages that we have to go through in order to achieve that shovel ready status, if you will. And I'll just move these aside, and I'll show you some of the other reports that we've got to do. Very important in commercial realty is the phase 1 ESA, or the phase 2 ESA, whatever our environmental site assessment is. And I'm not sure if this is not centered for some reason on my screen, but this is basically my initial phase 1 report. That's considering the environment, how it comes into play, and a basic environmental study. This is some sanitary design. This particular document's more than just the phase 1 ESA, but there's some other documents linked into it with groundwater and all sorts of information that's required for this application. And so I just want you guys to kind of look at and understand some of the depth of what's necessary for the site plan application. You're going to have to, in order to make your application and get what we're considering, site plan approval, there's a very detailed level that's got to go into it. And I want everybody to understand that, generally speaking, in the realty trade or industry, there's quite a bit of misinformation, I think, amongst professionals, unfortunately, at what stage is a piece of land being sold, because we've got clients that will say, yeah, I've got a shovel ready project that I'm selling, but the term shovel ready doesn't necessarily have a definition. It's a term that people throw around that I think is a misnomer, and I'd like to make sure that all of us and us professionals are aware of kind of some of the pitfalls in that and what it actually means. So to me, a shovel ready approval for this project in particular would mean that I'm allowed and I have all the necessary approvals to to build the buildings and start the buildings immediately. Again, if I were to obtain site plan approval and I were to, with the application that I've got in and all of this that you're seeing, the architectural work is done, but not all of the engineering is complete. We've got preliminary civil engineering done with grading, and but there's still mechanical and electrical engineering to be done. There's still some further architectural work to be done to finalize materials, and there's still quite a bit of work that has to be done on this project, and actually obtain that building permit. So site plan application usually means that we haven't talked about zoning yet, but sometimes a project is not necessarily currently zoned for what you're looking for. Generally, when you get site plan approval, it does mean that the zoning has been approved also, and some municipalities require you to go through a zoning application to change the zone for higher density or to change the use. And then once you've obtained zoning, you can obtain site plan approval thereafter. So generally, once you have your site plan application and your site plan approval, the zoning is complete. Some municipalities will allow you to apply for zoning at the same time as your site plan application. And so generally when you've got your site plan application, the zoning is in place, but that doesn't mean that it's shovel ready. And even if you have your approval, like I said, the main things to focus on are you still will likely have to complete a large amount of engineering in order to get the building permit. So you can have your site plan application, and in theory, all of these architectural plans can be approved, and that generally means you're approved for the use. And if you work towards getting your final permits, you will be allowed to build it, but there's still a large amount of money that's required to be spent in order to complete engineering. And in order to get your building permit, you generally have to pay your development fees and a building permit fee. And those fees go towards giving the municipality, enough money in their coffers and in their bank to pay their engineers and their in-house staff to come and do all the necessary all the necessary inspections along the way. During the development phase, there's quite a lot of inspections that have to happen, and the municipality has to send their people as well. So those development fees give them the upfront money in order to pay their staff to service the actual development itself. So anyway, I just, if anything today, wanted to have general discussion about the site plan application process, show you a little bit about how it might go, and some of the pitfalls to look out for when we are going through land, and whether you're looking at a raw piece of land or you've got an application on it. That's another big misnomer is there's a lot of people that will create some architectural renderings and not even make a full application on the land, just have a pre-consult and with the city or the municipality, and say to a buyer, let's say we've got a seller, and the seller will go in, make some renderings like this pretty picture in front of us, take it to the city will, in a pre-consultation, will say, generally speaking, yeah, we like your idea and we encourage you to do these studies for the application. And sometimes a seller will take the piece of land at that stage and try to sell it as though it's got some form of approval because the city has indicated that they would generally support the use. And I find a lot of that in the industry. There's a lot of misinformation, and I think it stems a lot from unfortunately, the agents not having the background to understand what their clients are telling them. If a seller tells them, hey, we've got basic approval to build this development, and we can put, the city's indicated that they support up to certain amount of density, we can put skyscrapers on this, and the city will support it. The city will never actually give you an approval or say that you can do something without going through this whole process, the site plan application process, getting these approvals through the proper chains. They might indicate that, okay, generally speaking, we would, like to support more density on the property, or, if you were to obtain this next zone, if you change the zone from R2 to R4, you can, achieve higher density. And they might tell you, well, in that R4 zone, these are the height restrictions that we're working with. They might tell you information, but not necessarily give you the approvals. And I find that there's a lot of, landowners or sellers that do a couple of the steps that are necessary along the way, but not get the project or the piece of land to exactly where it needs to be in order to obtain those approvals. And then they try to sell it as though they've got support from the city, and it's got that specific use. Those properties generally, they're going to be looked at or purchased by some builders. And from our realty perspective, we have to be careful, because a lot of times they're asking too much money for the project at the stage that it's at. And a builder might say, okay, well, I'll purchase this land conditional upon reviewing all of the land and the files and where things are at. But a lot of times those projects are going to fall apart because they've negotiated the land based on having some type of approval, and they think the buyers think that the seller's further along in the process than they actually are, because the seller's told the realtor that oh yeah, we've got approval, or we're shovel ready. Meanwhile, there's still another year's worth of work to get the final approval, and there's $500,000 or $1 million required to finish the engineering and pay for the development fees and get the building permits. So I think it's very important to know enough about this to understand that we have to dig further into what our clients are telling us, and really understand at what stage they're at. I find a lot of realtors will take on a listing, throw the renderings up on the MLS, and they're not necessarily understanding what the process is or what stage it's at. Don't get me wrong, there's some really good realtors in the city of Ottawa. There's really good realtors out there everywhere, and you can understand that when you see a listing and you give the agent a call and say, hey, where's this at? And they send you every file from the site plan application, and they're very organized, or they actually show you the site plan approval document that was obtained by the city, or they've actually got a building permit. Then it's shovel ready. If you've got a building permit ready for this thing to be built at any time, in my opinion, that's a shovel ready project, and you can get behind that. But in the meantime, if you've got a buyer looking for development land, or if you've got a seller, I encourage you to seek more information. Some support that you could get is usually right there on the documents that have been provided. Let's say you've got in this case, if you guys will look at my screen, you'll see my architectural plans. If you look down here, you'll see the architect that's provided the plans, and don't hesitate to call the professionals that have created the plans. They're the ones that are in the project they know where it's at. If you were to call my architect up right now and say, where are we at in the stage of this development, he'll be able to tell you, yeah, we've issued these plans for application, and it's in the application phase right now. We expect 4 to 6 months worth of time to be site plan approved, and then after, there's further engineering that needs to be required. So don't hesitate to fact check if you've been given any documents. Get a hold of the company that's been working on these documents, and obtain more information for yourself. Ask questions. Ask the professionals. Well, what does that mean? How much longer is it required? How much more money do you think is required to actually get building permit? Is there challenges in it? You might talk to the planning staff. My planners are Novatech Engineering. They're some of the best planners in the city. And if you were to ask them what kind of challenges there would be at a particular site, they'd tell you. If obviously, hopefully they've been given permission from the seller. If the seller's selling a project shovel ready, it's, if you find a consultant that's been told to not say anything about the project to a buyer, little bit of a red flag. Dig into these projects a little bit more and educate yourself and your buyers, on the process. And hopefully you come across sellers that are organized. Generally speaking, if I'm selling a piece of development land for somebody that's got some application on it, I want to have all the files on hand, so when a buyer reaches out, I can pass them all along and make sure I'm giving them as much information as possible. So anyway, I've been ranting and raving about the site plan application process and site plan approvals. Does anybody have any questions at this time before I figure out if I'm gonna chat about anything else here? How long have we all been in the industry? Meraldo, I see you. I see you on here. How long have you guys? How long have you been in the industry? Nobody's talking. That's okay. It's 8 months. I got a text from Meraldo. He's been in the industry for 8 months. Anybody else come across any development parcels of land that they or experiences that they care to talk about, or questions through the process? Liam's been licensed for a year and a half. It's not abnormal to have quite a few, let's say, newer professionals in the industry, and this is where I really want to discuss with you guys and make sure that you understand. There's quite a bit to that goes into development land. It doesn't mean that you can't sell it right off the bat. It just means that you should seek the information and not necessarily take our sellers' words for granted. There's quite a bit that goes into development land. I love working with development land. I love working in commercial realty. I find that the buyers and sellers, if you dig into them, they're generally savvy people, and they're decision makers. They're often objective, and I love working with commercial buyers and sellers, whether that's an apartment building or a commercial plaza, or a piece of land. I love working with these types of individuals. They're generally, like I said, savvy decision makers, and it makes the process great if you can dig into professionals that are they're out there just trying to do things, and we can help dig in and go seek information and help them achieve their goals to make money. And that's obviously how we're providing benefit to our clients and providing value, and that's where we're actually going to, anytime you create value out to the world, you're going to get it back in our case in form of commission. So I encourage you all to you've taken the initiative to show up here at a commercial training and understand a little bit more about it. I hope I've hit a couple of chords with people and at the very least um, made sure that next time that you see a piece of shovel ready land or something that's got a some type of drawing or architectural rendering for somebody selling something that they're saying is a piece of development land or a development that's partially completed. I hope that this encourages you to at least ask more questions, dig in a little bit further, and educate yourself on exactly what it is. And in doing so, um, you're gonna gain more knowledge and create more value for yourself. So and don't hesitate to reach out to me at any time. I don't know if all of you are a part of Northern Alliance or you're prospecting to see if it's the right fit for you, but I encourage you to reach out to myself or any of the Northern Alliance, partners, guys like Steve Alexopoulos and myself that are with Metro City. We love to help people and educate and partner. If you've got a big project, I've met quite a few of what I would call realty partners of mine that have reached out, because they've come across a client that has a development piece and they just don't know enough about it. And I'm happy to work with people on these files, and I encourage you to reach out anytime if you've got further questions or just general knowledge that you're seeking. We're here to help, and look forward to hopefully meeting all of you. So anyway, I've been chatting for quite a while. I got somebody talking here. Who's that?
Hey, sorry, it's Liam. I was just wondering if I could ask you a quick question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I do have like a lot that's been up for sale for like months now, and it's like I'm in Ottawa myself, but this is like a Sphere lead, and it's a vacant lot in Brighton, Ontario.
Okay.
So it has like rural zoning. Basically, it's a bit mixed with the properties that are built along it's a county road. Essentially, there's some mixed commercial, there's some commercial, but it's mostly, homes, people operating businesses out of homes, and then there's next door there's a storage facility. Essentially, the problem I'm having with prospects here is that it's it's got a lot of conservation along the property, which
Yeah.
kind of prevents people from there's just not a whole ton of area on the property to develop. So I don't know if you can give me some advice as to how like this would be you know more marketable in a sense.
Okay. How big of is the property?
It's not a huge lot. It's essentially about 1.2 acres.
Okay. And there's environmental, are you talking about wetland?
Yeah, exactly.
There's some wetland in the back of it, or is it in the middle, or where is this wetland
It's
located?
it's covering mostly like the southwest part of the lot, and honestly, um, there's a lot in between, but south of the lot, about maybe 15 or no, it must be about 30 meters away. There's also a CN railway as well.
Okay. So I this is a great question. I appreciate you asking it. I've dealt with a ton of environmental challenges in my career. Certainly being from sandpits and quarries, but I sell a lot of land, so I come across this quite a bit. Um, what the challenge is with the wetland, is it provincially significant wetland or is it an unevaluated wetland? Do you know?
I think I'd say it's pretty significant. Like it covers a majority of the lots south of that county road, kind
Okay.
of stretches a long way, and there was definitely like a commercial lot for sale there that was being advertised as a development opportunity for another self-storage facility. But I had a lead that inquired about both the lots and done some research. So what you mentioned earlier resonated with me because all of that, all those blueprints were sketched over conservation land, right? So I don't know if that's like ethical or how would you put that?
Well, some of it's, some of what we see, of that nature is not necessarily ethical. Some of it's ignorance and not really understanding what they're dealing with. Some of it's just, taking their client's word for it and just slapping it up on the listing. But the way I understand, this issue is all of the land here in Canada is certainly near the municipalities. There might be some land, up north that's in unorganized townships that isn't covered by a conservation authority. But what I'm getting at is most of the land that we're going to deal with is governed by some conservation authority, and it's a level of government, if you will, that's in place to be stewards for the land. In Ottawa, we've got three different conservation authorities. On the, let's call it the west side, we've got Mississippi Valley, and then in the middle towards, well, Rideau River, we've got the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, and towards the east, we've got South Nation Conservation Authority. And these conservation authorities their job is to protect habitat and to make sure any land use has, habitat and the environment in mind. So your property that you've got listed is governed by some type of a conservation authority. I don't necessarily know the Brighton region as intimately as I would with something around Ottawa. I've got a good amount of land covered from Picton, as far west as Picton, as far north as Pembroke, and as far east as, the Quebec border that I cover. So I know most of that land and the conservation authorities intimately, and the process, but I don't know Brighton. But what I encourage you to do is reach out to the conservation authority, in Brighton, and figure out which one it is and discuss the land with them. See if they've got some better mapping. I know in the city of Ottawa, I'll pull up. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Geo Ottawa.
Mhm.
But on most of the large cities, like, Toronto, I'm assuming Brighton has some type of a form of Geo Ottawa that has all these different layers associated with it. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at your particular conservation. Do you know which conservation authority you're working with in Brighton?
Yeah. So
There you go.
honestly, nobody's been inquiring on it for a little bit. I've been kind of busy hustling with like residential stuff, but it's
Yep.
the Lower Trent Conservation Authority,
Okay.
and then Northumberland County kind of works with more so building the driveways and stuff like that, the entrances to the lot.
Yeah. Good for you for understanding the conservation authority. This is Geo Ottawa. For anybody else, kind of following along, this is Geo Ottawa, and this is where, it's identifying. I just I'll go to the west end and show everybody. This is kind of the Carp Ridge wetland complex and significant wetlands. If you know right where that is and you've got it overlaid, then that's great. You're a good amount of the way there. I will say that, if there's a difference between provincially significant wetland and just unevaluated wetland. I'm just in some subdivision here in the West End, and you'll notice that this particular wetland here, it's just at the back of a farm field. This blue is identified as unevaluated wetland. Not to necessarily be confused with over here, we've got a completely different zone. You'll see EP3. That's provincially significant wetland, and it's much harder to deal with a provincially significant wetland than it is to deal with an unevaluated wetland like this. And there's a discussion probably getting around to, you know, how you might approach it. There's a discussion to be had potentially with your seller in how to understand exactly what you've got. Number one, I would figure out if it's provincially significant or if it's just unevaluated. I'd talk to the conservation authority about, you know, if it is unevaluated, there's potential that it could be mitigated in some way. And I have moved wetlands in the past, or I've been issued approval to fill them in. Generally speaking, what has to happen is something called an EIS, an environmental impact statement, and you pay an environmental engineering company to come in, do an environmental impact statement, and assess what the what the development impact would be on the land if you were to develop a particular, you know, let's call it whatever you'd like to build there. If you think self-storage is the highest and best use, whatever it is that you're looking to build, an environmental impact statement will generally show you, you know, what the impact will be, and then based on that statement, the municipality will tell you where you might be able to build on it. I'm gonna zoom in on a piece of land that I know and understand. This is a piece of land out in Dunrobin, and you'll see a big house that's been built here. And before this house was built, this blue here, the unevaluated wetland, came all the way out and wrapped around here and would have prohibited this house being built. But I worked with the seller and the buyer. The buyer put the piece of land under condition, and we worked to get that that unevaluated wetland moved by a cut fill application. But it was the environmental impact statement that told the municipality exactly what was going on the piece of land. Often these conservation authorities, what happens every few years, likely they update their plans. They fly over these days with drones. They take elevation shots, and they base their mapping on those drone elevations. And sometimes you can work with them, and you can have a piece of land that's fully covered by wetland, and if it's zoned, you know, for some type of of use, let's say it's zoned to build a single family home, or it's zoned for some commercial. Generally speaking, even if the whole property is covered in some unevaluated wetland, you'll be given the right to build somewhere. It can take a long time to obtain that right and go through the environmental impact statement and get the right to do it. And what they'll generally do is tell you where on the property is best suited for development, and they'll give you an envelope that you can build on. Let's say you're 1.2 acres, they'll say, okay, on the front 0.4 acres or whatever it is, if you stay right on the road front as far away from the wetland as possible, we will allow you to build a certain amount of square footage. And if you have to put a septic in, you'll be mitigated, and you'll be forced to put in a more environmentally friendly septic, like an eco-flow system. Is your particular land serviced? Is there water and sewer at the frontage?
No, it's completely vacant land.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think some of the houses there on propane and well and septic.
Yeah, so you'll likely have to put in you know, an EcoFlow septic for the building. And if water is required, you might be doing self-storage and it requires no water or sewer at all.
Right.
You know, just bringing hydro in. But all of these approvals and what you can do on that land are going to be, I guess if this is the information that I can best give you, is that what you can do with the land, not only is it, you know, with the zoning and the municipality, but the conservation authority is going to be involved with any piece of land that's got wetlands on it. But I would find out whether they're, you know, unevaluated or the equivalent, just meaning they're not provincially significant. Generally, provincially significant wetlands are zoned EP3, environmentally protected, and the actual zone is created so that they can really never be touched. And it's very hard to, you know, establish any type of building on environmentally protected land that's provincially significant or federally protected. So hopefully the wetland that you've got in the back is, you know, some type of unevaluated designation, but contacting the conservation authority and discussing with them specifically is going to give you a little bit more knowledge into, you know, what it is. It might be that they will allow you to build a certain amount and just keep your buildings, you know, tucked right up towards the street frontage and mitigate the amount of impact to that, you know, otherwise, you know, not as significant wetland, unevaluated wetland. So there may still be things that you could do with it, but I think certainly arming yourself with as much knowledge as you can would be helpful, and it'll help you learn about that process. I've moved floodplains before with cut and fill applications. It can be possible. Definitely worth knowing whether it's provincially significant or if it's something that the conservation authority, you know, says, you know, yes, you will be able to develop something on this property, but we, you know, we will require you to do an environmental impact statement, which is, like I said, just a study done by some environmental engineers. It might cost, you know, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 or whatever, and the outcome will give the conservation authority the knowledge that they need to tell you what you could, you know, what size of a building you can build and where. So that's one step that I would take. And if your seller is really prudent, they might proactively do that environmental impact statement themselves and say, okay, I'm going to spend the $5,000 to know exactly what I can build, and then that'll give buyers more confidence to, you know, to buy. I always encourage, you know, commercial sellers to go and do some environmental work ahead of time, especially if this is a commercial piece of land. And if there's wetland on it, number one, a commercial piece of land, I always encourage the sellers to do an ESA, your environmental site assessment. If it's a phase one, that phase one is, you know, a clean bill of health will be required for anybody looking to get financing on a commercial piece of land or a commercial development. So I try to encourage my sellers to do some of this environmental work ahead of time. You know, a phase one ESA might take $5,000 and a couple months time, a month and a half's time. But if you can hand a buyer a clean phase one ESA and give them the confidence that, yep, the land is clean, there's no contamination on it, the bank will lend on this current phase one ESA, that often will help negotiate a higher price for the land. Because in many instances, a buyer is looking to buy a piece of land and they look at it and they go, okay, well, I don't know if there's environmental impact here or not. I have to put that down as a condition. And during the conditional period, I need to spend $5,000, and they're taking on risk and they don't know the outcome of that study. So if you've got a prudent seller that might be willing to spend a little bit of money in the right places, you could encourage them to do their environmental studies. In this particular case, you know, the EIS, environmental impact statement, will help show them what could be built, and if the Conservation Authority is, behind giving them a building envelope, and whether it's a significant or an unevaluated wetland, what kind of habitat, there is in order to understand what you can build. And, and always with commercial, I'm encouraging my sellers to do the environmental site assessment first, a phase 1 ESA, and so that we can hand a buyer a clean bill of health, and give them the confidence, and that'll generally get more money for the land. That'll generally fetch a higher price for the land, and it's money well spent. So those
Awesome.
are a couple things that you might be able to try. Liam, I encourage you to, there's some other things that we could chat about anytime. I encourage you to reach out to me anytime. If you want to show me the specific piece of land, there might be some other things that I could identify and help you out with, but I would start there. And how long have you been on the market there?
Gosh, it's been a while, to be honest. Like, he really wanted to list it. Let me check here. I'm got MLS open, but he really wanted to get it listed in like the winter. So it's been there for a while, since like November, end of November last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I would do some homework, get what you can. If the seller's not willing to, spend any more money on it. I understand that also. A lot of sellers generally say, well, that's the buyer's responsibility. Let them come in and do their homework. But you can see how that would, put off a buyer, and give them less confidence in it. But the very least, if it's been on the market that long, I usually push for a cancel relist, or some type of price reduction, or something to keep it moving. But
Yeah.
if it is a decent piece of development land, it will eventually sell. But generally, those ones, I call them, that have a little bit of hair on them, they will sell, but they definitely require more time on the market, and you need a savvy person to come in and understand what they're doing. But if there's a lot of wetland on it, they're generally worth less than what the seller understands. The seller says, well, acre of land is selling for this, and that's what mine's worth. But if it's riddled with wetland, it's definitely worth a lot less, because somebody's going to have to come in and put some big dollars, or at the very least some fill, to work with it. And generally speaking, another thing to look out for with wetland is, if it's been wet for a long time, the ground itself might be unsuitable to build on. It might be soft. It might be full of peat moss from decaying, plant matter over hundreds, and maybe even thousands of years. So a buyer might understand that, and know that they have to bring in $50,000 or $100,000 worth of crushed stone, or engineered fill to build on. So they're definitely the challenges. But I've sold a lot of pieces of land with wetland on it. Keep the faith, but I'd try to arm yourself with some knowledge about what the municipality or what the Conservation Authority will allow there, and that might give you some more confidence in conversation to say, yeah, yes, there's wetland on it, but Conservation Authority has indicated that they would support building, on this percentage of it, or what have you. Whatever the answer is, might give you some more confidence to discuss with people. And then once you get that information, and you've got some new knowledge about it, then try to do a cancel relist, get it freshened up, and once the phone rings, you might be better suited to have good conversations with people.
Yeah, thank you so much. Honestly, this is a lot of stuff that I think is going to help a lot. So I'm gonna do some digging and follow up with my leads, and definitely probably cancel and relist. So thanks, man. Appreciate it so much.
Anytime, anytime. Okay. Any other questions before we get going?
That was it for me. I think this is a lot of info for me, so I think I gotta cut it off here.
All right, good. Hey, reach out anytime. I'm not hard to find. you know, I'm like I said, I'm a partner in the Northern Alliance group, and I encourage anybody in the industry. Are you part of Northern Alliance?
I'm with EXP, so I mean, I joined. I'm in Ottawa, but I kind of got in with the Nadeau group
Yep.
in Kingston, and so I hop in every once in a while on these calls. I went to the Evolve event, which was awesome, super inspiring. So I got this now booked in my calendar every Wednesday, so I'll be
Nadeau is part of our family, so that's great. Feel free to give me a shout anytime. I'm happy to collaborate, help in any way I can, and maybe we'll do some business together.
awesome. Thank you, appreciate that. I'll reach out to you.
Okay, thanks everybody for coming, and hope I'll see you the next time.